And we're back now with Congressman Steny Hoyer, just reelected the #2 man in the House Democratic leadership. Congressman, I want to ask you about tax cuts and a lot of other things, but I got to start with these pat-downs. I mean, this uproar that's going on. Are you hearing any of that, and does the House plan to take any action?
Oh, yeah, I think the pat-downs are going to be very controversial. The TSA is, of course, faced with a very difficult problem. They want to keep the airplanes safe. They want to keep us safe as individuals and as air travelers. On the other hand, they also want to honor our personal privacy. And reaching that balance, it's clear that there's not a consensus on whether they've done that yet. Benny Thompson, the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, has written to TSA looking for a response, looking for how they analyze this. There are going to be hearings on this. So it's a very controversial item with two worthy objectives. Number one, keeping us safe, but number two, also honoring our personal privacy.
Well, I mean, would you want to undergo one of those
I don't
things?
think any of us would want to undergo that. I don't think any of us feel that the discomfort and the delay is something that we like. But most people understand that we've got to keep airplanes safe.
Let's also talk a little bit about this whole business of these trials of these terrorists. We know what happened last week. You heard what the Secretary of State says. Do you think there will be a move in the House to cut off these funds? I know the Republicans are already talking about to bar these people from being moved from Guantanamo.
Well, of course, as you know, we've had that. We haven't had any authorization for such movement. Except for trial, but I think the answer is there's great concern. I'm not sure it's very warranted. Whatever happened in this trial, it was held here in a Title III court, and it was held safely in this court. Now the outcome, one count out of I think 250 or 275 counts, was disappointing. However, the count that he was convicted on has a 25-year to life sentence, and of course at the federal level there's no parole, so he's going to spend a very long time in jail.
Given your druthers, would you rather see them tried in a civilian court or in a military
court?
What
I've suggested to the administration 2 years ago, that we look at the option of having either military commissions or Title III courts. I've been down to Guantanamo. There are facilities in place there.
Do it there.
Title III court can sit there. You don't have to bring them to the United States. I think under the Constitution we could clearly impanel a Title III court to dispose of these cases in a proper way in Guantanamo itself.
Well, I mean, what would you do? Fly the jury in, or what?
Well, we'd have to figure that out. But juries, as you know, are sequestered in many cases, so it wouldn't be much different. And it's a Caribbean island. It's not like you're sending them to an archipelago or Siberia. But the fact is that we need to figure out how to get these cases resolved, whether we do it through military commissions or Title III courts. And I think you're right, bringing them to the United States, given the current concerns and makeup of the Congress, probably not going to happen.
Let's talk a little bit about tax cuts. One of the big things you're going to be dealing with is in this lame duck session is whether or not to extend the Bush tax cuts, which expire at the end of the year. Democrats want them for middle and lower income folks. Republicans say, no way, you've got to also extend them for people in the upper income brackets. We keep hearing hints, signals, whispers that the president might be willing to compromise, maybe make those tax cuts for the upper income folks temporary in order to get the ones for the lower income people. Would House Democrats be willing to go along with that, or do you have a problem with the president?
Bob, I don't have a problem with the president, exactly what he says on this is he's for the 250,000 and under. That's his position. That's our position. Let me say that this election, as we know, was, in my view, essentially about two things. Number one, we hadn't grown jobs quickly enough. We hadn't grown the economy, and concern about the deficit. Now, if you're going to try to balance those two things, one of the things you don't want to do is have average working Americans have an increase in their taxes. We're absolutely opposed to that happening, and we're going to work towards not making sure that working Americans don't have an increase in their taxes. On the other hand, there's a great concern about the deficit, which means the best off of us have to contribute to making sure that we pay for what we buy. That's the balance we have to make, and I'm hopeful that we can work together and find common ground on this issue, trying to work on both growing the economy and bringing the deficit down, because I think that's what Americans want.
But I'm not sure you answered my question there. Are you willing to compromise on these upper income folks, make those tax cuts temporary in order to get the other ones?
I'm not willing to compromise on your show, Bob, but what I am willing to do is to say, look, our objective is to make sure that working Americans don't get a tax increase at a time when the economy is still struggling, not growing as fast.
If the president
On the other hand,
and
we need to make sure that we don't give away $700 billion in tax expenditures, which is going to make our deficit even worse. We've got to accomplish both objectives, and I am certainly prepared to try to seek common ground and work with Republicans in trying to get to that objective.
If the president came to you and said, Mr. Hoyer, the only way I can get this done and get these Republicans to go along is at least give the upper income folks a temporary extension of the tax cut, what would you say to him?
If the president comes to me, and we've had discussions, I'm certainly going to talk to him about how we move the ball forward. As you know, Bob, I'm somebody who believes that no action at a time of challenge is really not the way to go.
But you're not going to tell me what you're going to say to him.
No, I think that's probably correct.
All right. I would just note that Nancy Pelosi says no way, no how on
well,
that.
let me say
she's
this.
She's your leader. So you're with her on this?
She's the leader of our party. And the fact is that I believe strongly, again, I want to state that working Americans, and we set the bar at $250,000 for a family and under, should see no increase in their taxes. On the other hand, we have to get at this deficit as well, and those of us who are better off need to help do that. Yes, we've got to cut spending, but we can't keep cutting taxes and expect that not to have an impact on the deficit. It does. So what I'm saying, Bob, is to you or to anybody else is, look, let's try to move forward. We'll talk about how we do that, and we need to get agreement. I'm a legislator that knows you got to have 218, and the Senate, unfortunately, you got to have a supermajority.
Are you glad that Nancy Pelosi decided to run as leader of the House Democrats? A lot of people thought that she shouldn't. A lot of people thought that you would run for leader if she didn't.
Well, had she not run, I would have run for leader, and I think I would have been elected leader. Having said that, this election was, I think, about issues, about concerns and anxiety the American people have, not about personalities. They want us to focus on jobs and growing the economy and bringing the deficit down. I think Leader Pelosi will do that. I'll do that. Hopefully our Republican colleagues will do that as well, and we'll find common cause to reach that objective.
All right. Steny Hoyer, always enjoy having you with us.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks for being here.